And I'm Gil from the Rich Relationship Refuge.
And today we have shifted our way of doing content to being the how-to channel. So if you're here now, or if you're going to be joining us later, we are going to be showing you how to communicate. And I kind of want to do something. We're going to show, we have all our little cards to show you the different things that we're doing. But right now it's going to be story time. I'm going to give an example of how
I have no idea where this is going, y'all. So this is new to me. So this is all for story time.
Kiss me. Mwah. Okay, so we forgot to kiss. We always kiss first. I want to give a great example of how communication can make or break your relationship. So whenever I cook like fried foods, I cook them outside in the garage. I've been doing that for years, since we lived in Louisiana. And so I was making some of the meaty mushrooms in the air fryer. And I normally unplug the the fryer and cut it off. And so I didn't do that. I forgot. And so Gil came in the next morning and he said, hey, babe.
Thank God we didn't burn up last night. I didn't start with that.
No, he didn't. No, he said, hey, babe. He said, we forgot to turn off the fryer. So the fryer was on all night, and it fried all night, and it was smoke, and they burnt the oil. And I said, we didn't forget. I forgot. I said, and I'm so sorry. I said, I'm so sorry. He said, no. He said, we forget, because I always, at night, I go and check everything. I walk through and I check it. And I just told him, I said, I appreciate the way you included yourself. And to me, that's the example of being the head of the household. That's what leading looks like. That's what being the head looks like. It means, and we said it before, that you're the first to forgive, you're the first to do everything, and you take responsibility.
Right.
And so I appreciate Gil taking responsibility for that, but that was really my fault.
You know, it really wasn't, I wasn't giving it forethought as far as like.
And he just looked at me like I was crazy when I said it.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you practice a certain type of communication over time, it becomes your habit. And that's what we really always talk about, new habits, because even in that scenario, at night before we go to bed, I always just go and check doors, windows, locks, everything, and all that good stuff, just to make sure everything is good to go. And I forgot to just go in and check the fryer, because I normally know when she is frying or cooking or anything like that, not because she will forget, but just to make sure it's done. Because guess what? When your house is burning down, you're not thinking about who fault it was.
Right.
You're just thinking about how did this happen, or getting everybody out safely and all that kind of stuff. And if that's something that you can prevent, why not just do it? And why do you have to either take credit for it or point fingers at it just to say something happened? But in that scenario, thankfully, it was just smoke and things like that. Just a little bit of smoke, it wasn't anything terrible, but except the smell, y'all.
Yeah, and it's still, my car still smells, the garage still smells like. So let me give you an example of what that looks like if it would have been done the wrong way. So today we're talking about communication.
And if you were with us last week, we were actually talking about your communication styles. So you can go back and take a look at that video. We talked about why is your communication style so important. Is because we tend to communicate in our style to other people, and that can become a obstacle or a problem if you are communicating wrong, or if you find yourself going over and over same things over and over again because it seems like the message is not getting across. Maybe it's your style. Yeah. So this is kind of like a part 2. So now that you know your communication style.
Now we're going to explain to you, first of all, communication is 2 parts. It's active listening and assertive speech.
So active listening first. When you think about active listening, it's not just you hearing the words that are coming out of a person's mouth and those types of things. Active listening is basically listening to understand the other person, where they're coming from about a scenario or situation or what they're trying to communicate, and not necessarily thinking about some of your responses or what you want to say when they finish their statement, So when it comes to active listening, flip it over. We're talking about active listening. When we're talking about active listening, listening to understand is the key. So remember that listening to
So
understand
let's give an example.
more than a response.
So okay, so let's use that scenario.
Okay.
About the leaving the fire.
Okay.
You came in, you said, "Hey, babe." So then that was you letting me know you needed my attention.
Right.
And you begin to talk.
Yeah. And I basically said last night when you were frying, we left the fryer on.
Yes.
It wasn't a conflict, but what I was communicating is a method or a my understanding of or a situation that happened that I wanted her to be aware of, that I was going to take my part in it, but she was also going to take her part in it.
Yeah, but and so when I'm listening to what he's saying, and then I use assertive speech. No, babe, that wasn't your fault. That was my fault. I left it on. I appreciate you accepting responsibility, but it was really my fault, and I am so sorry that I did that.
Right. And the active listening side of it, again, it goes back and forth just like tennis. So you're going from active listening to assertive speech back and forth in a normal conversation. So in this scenario, I heard what she said as far as when she was taking ownership of leaving the oil on, but I also understand that part, but it's also my responsibility to make sure she understands that it's us. It's not just me.
Yeah. And the thing that I love about our relationship, and I did a video on Friday. I went live on TikTok and I was talking about the thing that has been our saving grace, the thing that has been, well, Jesus, and then us having good communication. And so you can have Jesus, and if you don't have good communication in your relationships, you are going to struggle. And so that's an example of So communication is active listening. Yeah. Active listening and assertive
And I
speech.
love what Brian just put down there. Yeah, and when situations happen, you can go back. I could came in and pointed fingers and said,
That's
yeah,
what I was
babe,
saying, give an example.
yeah, babe, you know what? You left the fryer on.
Well, let's
And
give
you
an
could have
example.
killed us last night because the house could have burned down and we would have been dead because you were irresponsible and leaving the fryer on. You should have thought about that. I could have came up with a bunch of different scenarios about why it was her responsibility.
I want to give an example of how it could have gone the wrong way. Hey, I went out there and the fire was on all night long. You left it on. You could have burnt the house down. So that's also an example of not only active. Something else that we don't sometimes think about in our conversation is our volume and our tone. His tone when he came in and said, "Hey, babe, we left the fire. We he didn't say I. He said we left the fryer on last night." His tone and his volume automatically disarmed me. But just imagine if he would have came and said, "Yo, I went out there and the fire was on all last night and there was smoke everywhere and you could have burnt the house down and you're so irresponsible and this is not the first time you did this." And so your tone and your volume have a lot to do with your communication, and those are the kind of things that no one has ever taught us, because we have couples and they will say, "Oh, I'm just passionate and I talk loud." Well, when it comes to healthy communication, we're talking about communication for longevity. Tone and volume play a big part in how the person is going to receive what you say.
I think about even scenarios where we work with couples, and even I think about us. Let's just take it back to us. When we first got married, I remember a scenario where something happened and you were just going off on me about something.
Oh, do you mean the first time you didn't show up for the date? That was a weird date. When I cussed him out? Yeah. When we were dating, Gil was supposed to...
I was trying to keep it tactful.
But... It's okay. Let's just be transparent. Let's just be vulnerable. Yeah. Let's just be hot, honest, open, and transparent. When we were dating, we told this story before. We were dating, and basically, Gil was supposed to pick me up. He didn't come, and I cussed him out. I went off on him. My tone, my volume.
Her tone was very ugly first, and then the volume was very loud. If you come from a household... My mom did not scream and yell and holler and that kind of stuff. So think about when you were growing up. If you come from a household where even when there's conflict, it's a normal volume that people are speaking at, and they may have a disagreement, but nobody's yelling and calling anybody out their names or screaming and that kind of stuff. So now let's accelerate to when you become a young adult or an adult in your normal life, and all of a sudden you're in a relationship with somebody whose volume seems to always go up when they're
They're
upset,
always on 10.
or their tone is not
It's very
loving,
rough.
is not very loving and forgiving, to where you think about, wait a minute, my mom, my dad, or whomever didn't talk to me that way. Why are you talking to me that way? And next thing you know, guess what that's going to do? That's going to cause another conflict to the relationship, because you're not accustomed to this type of behavior when it comes to volume and tone. So now you got a conflict with the volume and tone, not about the fryer being left on and the smoke in the house. Now you have another obstacle. So now you just added two more items to the discussion that has nothing to do with the fire being left on.
Right.
So if that's something that you find that happens in your relationship, where the volume and tone become a factor where you can't even hear or even understand what the person's trying to say because the volume and tone is out of place, then that's what? It's going to cause a conflict.
Yeah. So far we've explained that communication is two parts. It's active listening and assertive speech.
Upside down.
Assertive speech. And you have to be very mindful of your tone and your volume. We're going to go into another part of communication that I think sometimes communication has 4 parts. It is verbal, nonverbal, visual,
And what's the other part?
and written.
Oh, okay.
And so many times we don't realize, even because we live in a text society. Have you ever gotten a text message from somebody and Gil was like, how you know that's what that person was saying? It's like, call me later. Have you ever read a text message and you added your own tone and volume to a text message?
Or you interpreted it, a tone and a volume, to somebody text message. You ever read somebody read a message and all of a sudden they add the drama to it? What she said and he said, and next thing you know, the neck is moving and the attitude is coming through. I don't know how you get that through just words like "I'm going to be late" or something that you could just look at some of your own text messages and see, have you ever added an attitude to somebody's message?
And sometimes it has nothing to do with the message. It's everything to do with the condition
Babe, I
of
just
your
said
heart.
I'm going to be late. I'm just getting gas.
Right.
What you mean you getting gas?
And so you have to be careful and be mindful of that. And so when we think about communication, we think about the verbals and the nonverbals. One of the things that I think that we don't think about, Gil always says he's always happy to come home. And I try to make sure that my nonverbals are welcoming to him. I was talking to someone today and I was saying, I am the same woman to when I was dating. I was the same girl to all the guys I dated. However, they were not mindful, or they didn't accept who I was. I've always been kind and loving and gentle, and that's who I am. But sometimes who you are is not received well, because sometimes it could be the other person, their interpretation, and sometimes it could be your nonverbals. These are nonverbals that send a message to the other person that you don't like. If Gil came in the house,
Is this a nonverbal?
and if he walked in the house and when he walks in the house, I stop what I'm doing.
We always, that's our habit.
I give him my eye contact. We kiss each other. Versus he walks in the house and
So-
I'm doing this. Or
on the couch. And there are going to be times where you're busy and you got things that you can't stop. But on the vast majority of the times, we will stop and acknowledge each other when we first see each other.
Because your nonverbals
Says a lot.
It can send a real big message to people. And so communication is so many aspects, and there's so many parts of it that we were never taught. Has anyone in the chat, let us know now or while you're watching now, has anyone ever taught you these elements of communication, and did you understand it to this degree? Because this could be the reason why we're struggling in our relationships, because so many of us were not taught about tone and volume. We weren't taught about nonverbal. We weren't taught that communication is written and that it's visual. And that, and so it's so many facets of it. And so we want to make sure that we give you, let's get some examples of a visual that will be communicating something. And this right here, this is a good visual of what combativeness looks like. It's really hard when you're trying to communicate to someone and they're checked out. We want to make sure that when we tell our couples, when you're having a difficulty or a conflict you're trying to resolve, the most important thing to do is to be close.
You see?
And touch each other and be giving the person eye contact.
And I would even say this, even when you're going through a conflict, and it can be difficult and it can be challenging to stop. Even you ain't got to be lovey-dovey or anything, but that even
But
if
you
you
just
just as much as just holding hands, because
It
regardless
does
of
something
what,
to your brain.
yeah, regardless of what you may be going through, when you stop and you touch each other and say, you know what, it's a reminder that we are in this together. And no obstacle, no problem should be something that's going to tear us apart. Now, granted, you're going to have situations that you ain't going to be feel like touching each other. It could be something that's very heavy and very serious. We understand that part.
But at least turn towards each other.
And face and give each other the attention
And
that
you
you
want
need.
to, by the end of the conversation, get to the point where you can touch. But you want to always make sure that whenever you're communicating, because your visuals and your nonverbals and what you write and all of those things play a part in your communication. And I know for me, my love language is words of affirmation. And so hearing Gil say, that was very affirming for me. It made me feel seen. It made me feel heard. He didn't lead with, you did this. He led with, we have a problem. Mm-hmm. And your volume and your tone was very, very affirming. It was very encouraging. And so I think that sometimes when we don't, how do you do it? How do you practice this? What does this look like in day-to-day life? And that's why we want to show you what communication looks like. One of the things I know for me, because if you notice, whenever Gil was talking, I'm always looking at him. A part of that is because I like to look at him and I like to hear him talk. But another part of that is I know that his love language is quality time. And so I want to always make sure that when he's speaking, that I'm giving him my undivided attention.
And I want to go back for a second to Renee talking about hers words of affirmation. When she was talking about that, the first thing I had to think about was it was difficult for me in the beginning of our relationship once we learned it, because it's not my normal nature to be constantly affirming, and I won't say constantly, to be affirming her about sometimes what you may think is not a big deal. Like every night, for example, every time Renee cooks dinner or cook anything for me, I always say, thanks, babe, I appreciate you cooking.
Yeah. And he always asks me when I'm cooking, hey, babe, is there anything I can do to help you?
And the reason why I do that is because it's a reminder for me that, one, I'm acknowledging something that she's doing for me, but also that I appreciate it, because I do, because if I've been at work all day, it's easier to go through a drive-through or something like that, but she cares enough about us, not just me, to say, you know what, I'm gonna cook something that's gonna be a little bit healthier, a little bit that's more beneficial for us. So therefore, she's gonna cook. And sometimes I do cook.
I like to cook. I know we have this whole generation of women who don't like to cook. I am not one of those women, and I know that most people would say it's because of my age. No, it's because of the way I'm bent. I am very picky about food, so therefore I want it prepared a certain way, and there's things that I don't eat. We're vegan and I'm gluten-free, and so it just makes it easier for me to prepare our meals.
Yeah, so when she's doing those things, it's not just an affirmation like, hey, babe, you're awesome, you're incredible. You can have affirming words even in situations and circumstances that you're going through, just like something like that. It may sound like a compliment, or it may sound like it just saying thank you for something, but guess what? That's still affirming something that someone is doing for you. So when she does that, I just let her know that I appreciate it, because I do. So if it becomes your habit, just to acknowledge sometimes the small things, you're going to find that it's going to pay huge dividends later when you're going through difficulties and conflicts and situations that are going to take some serious discussion.
So we use a positive example. I'm gonna use a negative example. So when we were moving here, we had a situation where there was something I communicated to Gil that I needed. And this is where our differences come in. When he said it's not a big deal. A lot of times in relationships, the problem is that you're never going to be alike. No matter how long you're together, I'm going to always be extroverted. I'm going to always be a direct communicator. It's just certain things about me. That's just the way I'm wired.
And I'm going to be a thinker, which is my communication style. And one thing that I'll just tell you, because she probably wasn't going to bring up the whole scenario, because I think, and even the feedback we get, and people realize real scenarios help reinforce the things that we're talking about.
How do you apply this?
So what happened was we were moving here back to Texas, and we were packing the moving truck, because we moved our stuff ourselves and things like that. So when you have a household to move, anybody who's done it,
if you've ever moved before, put it in the chat.
Yeah, thumbs up or something, that you're going to have to prioritize when you only have so much space and a whole lot of stuff, that you're going to have to decide what makes the trip and what don't. Sometimes. So anyway, I was packing the truck, and I had been doing this for like a day and a half. And you get tired, and that happens. And this affects your communication. This affects your communication style, but also some of the things we're talking about, your tone and your nonverbals and all those things. So I'm packing the truck, and I was getting near the end, and there was a patio set that we had around our pool back at our old home that Renee said she wanted to take with us. Yes. I'm looking at this truck, and y'all, I don't see it. And it's not just one or two pieces. It's not like a fold-up chair. Yeah. We're talking about nice patio furniture, couch, love seat, big easy chair.
It was like a sectional.
Umbrellas and things like that. And I'm looking, and I'm like, and so when she said that, she said it to me more than once. I want the patio set. And I'm thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, okay, I got you. And I'm making a mental note even as I'm packing the truck. So I get near the end, and it's obvious that this stuff is not going to make it on the truck, and she still sees it sitting out on the patio, but she sees the room in the truck, and she's like, I wanted my patio set. And I said, I'll just buy you another one. Don't worry about it. It ain't going to make it. But I said, no, I think the actual word that I said is, it ain't going to make it. So this is something that she really cared about.
It was the tone. It wasn't the volume. Because Gil always has the same tone. Let me say that about Gil.
Yeah, so
our tone, for both of us, we have mastered tone and volume. If I had to say something we have mastered tone and volume. Because my love language is words of affirmation, and Gil is just a very calm person. So even we're like livid, you would never know we're livid, because we have mastered tone. Not that we're suppressing, not that we're being fake. There are certain things that are just going to be your growth area and your strength. Some couples will have a very easy time with tone and volume, but they may have a problem with nonverbals.
So I probably had some nonverbals, because I was in the truck when she said that. What you would probably do? Oh my God, like this thing, it ain't gonna make it. And if she can see me when I say something like that, what do you think is going to happen, ladies? Are you going to be like, oh, hold up? Yeah, you probably are going to be like, no, we need to talk about this. You better start pulling something off that truck, because now that patio set is going. Now it's done turned into a conflict. But she said that, and she just turned around. When I said it ain't going to make it, she just turned around and walked in the house. Didn't say another word. And I didn't think about it. So guess what? I'm just like, yes, I'm just packing the truck. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I could see the end and stuff like that. I was like, babe, we'll donate it. We'll give it away. I'm thinking, because I said, we'll just buy you a new one, that we're good. Guess what, y'all? We wasn't good. And I heard about it after the fact. And this is something.
And another thing that's a part of communication is setting a time.
Yep.
I didn't make a card for that. Sometimes in the heat of the situation is not the time to try to communicate. Because if I know that I am upset, that is not the time for me to decide I'm going to talk to Gil, because I realize that I need to reconcile in my heart what's going on with me. It's not his job to control my temper and my temperament. It's mine. So I just knew that at that time, that was not the time to bring that up.
Because guess what? If we're on a strict timeline, we're in Alabama packing a moving truck to move to Texas, and we got maybe 4 days to do it. And I'm still packing and that kind of thing. So sometimes it's better to say, you know what, let's share this, or let's push this to the end. Even though that didn't happen right there, I didn't know it was happening, y'all, but it was happening, that we were going to talk about this later.
Yeah.
So, but what she did was she just went about going back to doing what she was doing, because we had a task that we had to complete. And
I couldn't let my feelings control me.
and I also think it was really good because it gave her the opportunity to really think about what is it that I said or how I responded that made her upset. Now, granted, y'all, I was unaware that this was going on. So I'm just packing my moving truck. I'm just on my little just packing the truck. I'm just trying to get my task done. Unbeknownst to me that we getting ready to have a discussion afterwards, which I was not prepared, y'all. But anyway, go ahead. So at the end of the day, I'm exhausted. I'm tired, and we come in.
I didn't say nothing that day.
No, and so
I waited till we got here.
Was it here? I thought it was at the hotel.
Oh yeah. We got back.
No. So we have finished packing the truck.
Yes.
And we were at the hotel because obviously all our stuff is on the truck. So we sitting at the hotel, and she started the conversation. When you hear this, guys and ladies, we got to talk.
I didn't say that.
Well, that's what I heard.
Yeah. And see, we never, that is a wrong thing to say. I normally start off with, I have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I have a problem. It wasn't about the furniture. It was about, I gave up so much. There was so much I let go of, that the one thing I asked you, could I have or could I keep, you didn't take into consideration what I'd already given up. And that made me feel like what I needed was not important.
Right.
And Gil's response was,
and when she said that, and you know what, I instantly thought about the situation. And one of the nonverbals that I did was, you know what, I acknowledged it evidently in my visuals, because I stopped and I looked at her and I let her say, you know what, say her piece. And then I started thinking about it.
And he dropped his head, and I automatically knew that he felt and I think sometimes we have to not be afraid to show when we're wrong. We have to not be afraid to show when we're upset, when we're disappointed. We need to make sure that in our relationship, that this is the one place where I can tell you that, that made me feel bad because it made me feel unseen, versus
unheard,
acting it out. Because we always say, whatever you don't talk out, you're going to act it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to make sure that in our relationship, we give room for each other to be totally transparent and vulnerable.
And I said, so you know what? I said, babe, I apologize. Please forgive me. I that was not my intention, and I never want to dismiss what she has to say and just like blow it off. I don't care if it's a patio set furniture or even the move that we decided to make, or even another major thing, because if you can't come to an understanding with each other in small things, you can forget about big decisions that you're going to have to make. So when she said that, I said, you know what, I blew it. I missed that.
Yeah.
That's on me. I apologize. Please forgive me. That was not my intention to communicate that her feelings. It wasn't about the patio set.
Right.
It was that I dismissed what she said, something that was important to her. It just happened to be in the form of a patio set.
Right.
That I said, you know what, I missed that. I apologize. I will do better.
And I will buy you a new one.
Well, you see, she got that part. She still.
And I will buy you a new one. So to me, I realized for me, we always talk about the 5 love languages. Gary Chapman just wrote a new book. It's called the 5 apology styles. For me, the greatest form of an apology is changed behavior. Telling me you sorry, you keep doing the same thing. To me, that is not your sorry.
Right.
apology to me is like with repentance. You turn away from the thing that you did that hurt me. And so I don't know what all of those languages are. I haven't read the book yet, but I think that would be something that would be good for you to kind of look at. But you need to know for yourself what makes you feel like someone when they say is
Or
an acceptable apology for you.
something like, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yeah, no, that's dismissive.
That's not an apology, y'all.
No, that's not.
But anyway, so go back right quick, so when she said that, so guess what? I have now in the forefront of my mind to say, you know what, when she, excuse me, comes to me and brings up a concern of hers, guess what I'm going to go back to? I'm going to go back to patio furniture and say, we're not going to repeat the same thing we did before.
Yes, you have that reference.
Yeah, I have an experience.
Yes.
To go along with the situation. If you don't learn from your experiences from past disagreements and past conflicts with your significant other, you're doing yourself a disservice because
right. Those are all
if you've gotten through it, you have your own case study to say, you know what, I missed that. This is how I'm gonna get past it this time. You got
and then
the
you
answer.
can talk about it. It's like, I realize that, when we're busy and it's a lot going on, that I have to make sure that I don't give you too much, because it's my part too. I have to make sure I know Gil doesn't do well with a whole lot of moving parts. So I can't give him something that I need in the midst of things happening. I need to make sure long before we get to the truck that I communicate what it is that I need.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Renee, I like what you said there. Humble, sincere, heartfelt posture is necessary. And absolutely, and that's the kind of scenario that we just talked about as far as even when she brought it to my attention, because when she does, and even when your significant other, your partner, your husband, wife brings something to your attention, it's our responsibility as the receiver
to listen.
To active listen.
To actively listen, not listening. And this is the difference between active listening and interpreting.
So when I'm bringing it to her attention, I'm saying she's bringing something to my attention, and I say, babe, I hear you. What you said, and I paraphrase it back to her and saying, you know what, I hear that I dismiss what you said when it came to the patio furniture. I just totally blew it off. I didn't think of that it was that important. While I'm looking at patio furniture, guys, we look at the actual physical thing that we're talking about. She was talking about how she felt.
Right.
And if you mix up the messages, she's talking about how she feels, and I'm focused on the patio furniture, you're missing it.
Yeah. Because active listening is listening to understand, not to tell me that how I feel is not important.
So in this scenario, guess what? If I'm listening to understand, I'm not going to talk about the patio furniture.
Yes.
I instantly knew she was talking about the dismissive attitude that I had about what she said. So that was because I listened to her and I understood where she was coming from and acknowledged it, because I flipped back to the assertive speech.
I used assertive speech.
She used assertive speech to tell me what the problem was. And I actually used assertive speech to even go back to her and tell her that I heard what she said. I acknowledged what she said. Because when you do that, it's an exchange.
It is.
It's going back and forth.
It's like
so
this.
You're going back and forth between those two. And if you're doing that, you're going to find that you're going to be more effective in coming to an understanding of what the problem is, the root of the problem, but also how am I going to get past it? You know what? And I think it's so important that I had to accept my responsibility in that scenario to say, you know what? I missed it. I didn't say, well, you know what? This is another lesson. I'm going to take a sidebar here for a second. I didn't say, well, you bought too much stuff. And every time we got to move, if you got too much stuff, then that just makes it harder. I think you just need to stop.
Yeah.
Guess what? That is not the time for me to bring up something that she did.
Right.
I had to learn this lesson. I don't know why we being so exposed to that.
That's what we do.
This is one of those things where we were young in our marriage. I'm going to remember where we're at, where we had a situation when we were younger in our marriage, and Renee was come to me with a situation, something that I did.
I have a problem.
She had a problem with something that I did, and she told me what it was. And then guess what I did? I broke out my tennis racket and I hit something right back at her about something she did that had nothing to do with what she brought up to me. And her response, instead of hitting it back at me, she said,
babe, if you have a problem with something that I did, then you should have brought it up initially. When let's do this. When I come to you or you come to me with a concern, that you need to know that you can come to me with your concern, and I'm going to listen and I'm going to try to understand it. I'm not going to then deflect by then giving you my concern. So whoever comes with the concern has the table. So if I come and say I have a problem, that's not the time for you to tell me what your problem is, because then you're dismissing my problem. And we still do that to this day.
And guess what? When she said that, I was like, oh, okay. She's right. You know, that's if there was a situation that come up, I could go back on the defensive. Again, if you remember what we talked about at the very beginning, we're in this together. We're in this relationship together. So we shouldn't be always in a mode of defending each other when we
Or
have concerns
competing
or any of that.
because really in relationships, and you should always try to lose. In order to win, you got to lose the argument. If you win the argument, you lost, because winning the argument meant you made it about you and not the other person. And Gil is so good about always being the first to apologize and the first to accept responsibility. And I appreciate that. And I think that's another thing about communication that has to be taken into consideration is your relationship with God. Because the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, meekness, and self-control, is not going to be something that comes natural. So a lot of the things that we're explaining and talking about in regards to communication is sifted through the fact that we are both believers. We are both Christ followers. And Christ, being a Christ follower, gives you a superpower, because you have the Holy Spirit living on the inside of you saying, hey, chickie, no, that's not okay. It's not okay to do that. I want to give another example.
Wait, but let me make one comment
sorry, go
about what
ahead.
you were saying about. So when we go through those scenarios and those situations where we going back and forth and tit for tat and those types of things,
Nothing gets resolved.
nothing gets resolved. And yeah, you may lose the argument about what you're going through because you're focused on you being right instead of getting it right when it comes to the scenario. If you don't focus on resolving the issue, you're going to find that it's going to resurface just at a later time. It doesn't mean that you resolved it. And yeah, you may have won the initial battle right then and there. But guess what? It's going to come back up
Yeah.
later on because you didn't resolve it. The goal is always to resolve the issues that you have with each other or the scenario or the situation instead of just you saying your piece. If you're remembering all the things that we talked about, whether it's your communication style and now all the things that we're talking about when it comes to the communication
Tone
process
and
and volume
volume,
and all the
active
nonverbal.
listening,
If you
service
kind of
speech.
start practicing these things, it's going to become second nature to you're going to find that you're going to be resolving things a lot faster, a lot quicker, and more focused on what the real situation is. Go ahead. You were going to make another point.
I want to give it another example of, we always talk about don't talk when you're angry, hungry, tired, or lost. Well, the other night we had I ordered because when we travel, it's really hard to take a retractable banner. So I created this tablecloth with our picture on it and our information on it. And I was so excited about it. And
I know where she's going, but I'm going to let her finish, but go ahead.
and so I was so excited about it. And Gil's personality is what you see. Gil is just calm. And so I said, babe, look at it. And he looked at it and he was like, oh, that's nice. Because normally if I show him something, I'm like, hey, I was like, babe, guess what? You know, look at it, look. And he was like, oh, that's nice.
That's nice.
And so I was like, oh, okay. And then I remembered, it's the end of the day. This brother's probably sleeping. So then I was like,
My wife loves to come and have these
deep,
moments at
conversations.
10:30, 11 o'clock.
And he go to bed at 10.
I can't hang y'all.
You can't. And so then I have another issue because I was like, hey, would you help me fold this up? And so I had it in my mind the way it was supposed to be done. Because I'd already did it earlier with Eli. He helped me fold it. And so I had
I'm just bringing up the signs that she's saying it so you know where we're at.
And so I said, hey, babe, would you help me fold this? And so he said, yeah. And so I was showing him how to do it. I was telling him how to do it, but I wasn't using assertive speech. And so he was trying to help me. And so I just took it I took it myself and I just did it myself.
Well, she just took it out of my hand, y'all. She didn't snatch it or anything like
Yeah,
that. She
I
just
just took
kind of
it.
removed it, got quiet, took it out of my hands, and basically just started folding it herself. And we went back to a certain speech. I said, babe, you didn't do that very well.
You didn't communicate.
You didn't communicate very well right there. And she was like, she didn't say anything. And I explained to her what happened. She was doing this. She was active listening to what I was saying. So I was using assertive communication to explain to her why, because I said, instead of you telling me exactly what you need for me to do when it comes to folding this, you just took it out my hands and just started folding it yourself.
And I was like, I'm sorry.
That was nonverbals.
I said, I'm sorry. So can I show you how I did it earlier? Because what I really want is for it to be folded so that our picture shows on there. But I didn't say that.
So just imagine something that small, folding up a sheet turns into
Tablecloth.
Or tablecloth turns into a full-blown knockdown, drag out conflict.
And normally it's because that is a symptom. There's been so many other areas where I didn't feel heard that could have triggered something else. And so sometimes the reason why it's important to talk things out and communicate and work through all of this stuff is because whatever you don't talk out, you will act out. That could have ended up being a major thing, but because there's been so many other times when Gil has made me feel heard, made me feel valuable, that one incident was not the sum total of our relationship. And I was like, baby, you're right, I'm sorry. I should have just shown you exactly that goes back to being a director.
A direct communicator.
I just direct, hey, let's fold this way. And whereas Gil's a thinker, I should have been more detailed in
what she wanted,
explaining what I wanted. But again, we go back to communication styles. Your communication style can be a hindrance when you're trying to do a task, because Gil is really good at really detail-oriented tasks, and I'm not. And so it's just understanding that when you are interacting with another person, you have to take into consideration your communication style, that's taking communication tone, volume, body language, visuals is your body language, written, all those things have to be taken into consideration. And this is all going on at one time. And so that's why it's important to slow down and think about the elements of this when you're not in a conversation. Yeah. Or it's like being mindful of, okay, so I had to, this is what I had to do. I had to talk to myself. Okay, now, I know that you could communicate directly, but everybody. There you go. Okay, we're back. It's froze for some reason. And so it's understanding that all of these elements are going on in the background. And the more you practice active listening and assertive speech, if you just only take away from this active listen and assertive, being, the importance of learning how to listen and be really clear about what you want. And sometimes that takes for you to stop and think about it. You need to be able to know what it is you need from the other person. You can't just expect for them to know. You can't expect for them to just be able to read your mind. And so these are just some of the things that we've learned to do over the years we've been married. And these are the things we teach our couples to do. Because once you learn, that's right, unspoken expectation. Thank you, Brian. That's a big part of it. They should just know. We have been together since we were 18, and there's nothing I just automatically expect for him to know. I communicate to him.
And I wanted to just go back. I remember what I wanted to talk about a little bit. And because some of you may be going through this when it comes to disagreements and conflict, but as we come to the end of this session, next week, is don't just be passive when it comes to disagreements, especially if you're the person that doesn't like confrontation in relationships. nine times out of 10 is because of past experiences and past things that have happened where you don't like conflict. I used to be a police officer and I don't like conflict. I don't think you can get even more than that. But guess what? That didn't prevent me from doing what I needed to do when a conflict came up. It's really knowing the skills and the ability that you have and practicing it in the situation at the right time to be able to resolve it. So Renee made the comment about, well, I just be the first to respond and say I'm sorry and give in and those things. Well, it's not to say I do that just to because I don't want to deal with the conflict and I just get rid of it, and because I don't want to just have us to have this disagreement. It's because you have to be willing to take ownership and remember that you are prioritizing the relationship over everything else. Regardless of the disagreements and conflicts that you may have with someone, you have a part in it. It may be the small part, but you do have a part in it. And you have to keep that in the forefront of your mind when it comes to you. You can't control this other person, but you can control how you respond in the situation with other people when it comes to conflict. So,
And communication is such an essential part of building healthy, rich relationships that we want to again show you how to. If you guys have some scenarios, we want to give you some time now. So if you have a scenario where communication has been an obstacle for you, please put that in the chat. If you're watching now, if you're watching later, please let us know where you're watching from in the feed. Please like, subscribe, share, do all the YouTube things, because we want to really continue to help. And when you do that, you allow us to help other people who are in need. So
we
thank you for
guys.
joining us. Thank you for joining us.
We love
you guys
hanging
have
out.
any
I love all the
questions?
comments that everybody's throwing in there. Thanks, Brian, for thanking that. Thanks, Renee, and all the other ones that
Does anyone have
comment.
any questions about, and we
The
did
stuff
this.
we talked about.
Yes, we talked about tone and volume. We talked about
Tone, volume.
Let's show them. Let's show them.
Tone,
volume. We did nonverbals.
We did the mainstay, which is active, assertive speech, and active listening.
We did tone, volume, which is important. We did the 4 parts of communication,
Written,
which is
visuals.
written, visual, and verbal. And so if you have questions in those areas, please put those in the chat. And if you have other relationship questions, please put that in the chat. We will answer them on Friday. I'll go live. Gil is going to read.
Hey, Mr. West from Canada.
Thank you
Toronto.
for joining us.
Thanks for hanging out with us today.
We've been there.
Yeah. We hope you guys have gotten something out of this session that we do. And we do these every Saturday at 12, going live and just sharing with you some of the things that we share with our couples as we're working with our couples about the relationship to help you build, repair, and restore your relationships, your marital relationships, your dating relationships. Don't forget to check out the book that we just put out.
The Singles Blueprint. Oh, guess what? Breaking news. We are from Detroit, and okay, we're changing lanes now. We're from Detroit, and we have a book signing on November the 1st at Barnes & Noble at Wayne State University. We are so humbled and grateful and excited. And we also have a book signing on November the 27th at Barnes & Noble in Beaver Creek. So if you live in Ohio, hey to all Ohio people, join us on November the 27th from 4 to 6 at the Barnes & Noble in Beaver Creek. And the book signing in Detroit will be on November the 1st from 2 to 4. And we're really excited. We're really grateful. The book is really helping so many people. The app is the Singles Blueprint. Marriage Mentors, Rich RR. We did that last week talking about your communication style. That's where that's located.
And the book itself.
And the book is at Barnes & Noble. You can go to Barnes & Noble. The Singles Blueprint for Dating and Marriage.
For the singles out there.
Yes.
We don't forget about the singles.
Yes. And we also updated the marital code to oneness. That's been updated. And we're excited about that. And so if you have any relationship questions, please put them in the chat. On Fridays on TikTok, I go live on TikTok and answer the questions in that platform from that week. And so I'll put those videos out. But we had 2 questions last week. One question was, how do you know if your picker is broken? And I made a video and I answered the question. And the other question was, does PMS Destroy Marriage. And it was an acronym for money, sex, and power.
Wow.
And I answered those questions.
Power, money, and sex?
Yeah, power, money, and sex, PMS. And so I made that video, answer those questions.
That's good.
And it was really fun.
Yeah.
And so if you guys have questions, please put them in the chat. We love you all. We're so grateful. The person from Ontario, Canada, our very
Wes.
first date, Wes, we actually went to Toronto.
Yep.
That was our first trip together, was Toronto.
Yep, from
so we love
Detroit. Caught the
Toronto.
train.
Yes, we did. That was our first trip.
But we appreciate you guys hanging out with us on Saturday. Thank you for
Love
your
you.
investment in time. We know that you guys could be doing a whole lot of other things, but we appreciate you guys just hanging out with us for
Yes.
this hour. Share the video with someone who you know could benefit from the information, and we will see you guys next week.
Saturday. We love you and thank you so much. You guys are the most important part of our community. And remember that you are more than enough in Christ Jesus. So we'll see you guys next Saturday, and we'll see you around the channel and all the other places.
Stuff. We'll see y'all.
Thank you guys so
Bye.
much.